yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, as always, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, long time ago now. But thank goodness, because it enabled me to be able to call all these games. I get a chance to call that Hawaii game on Saturday night against UNLV was very entertaining. Loved it. I'm back on the NFL side this week with Commanders, Eagles Thursday night on radio, and then Sunday, Dolphins, Raiders in the booth for CBS. So no college for me this week, but I love making sure that I am on the pulse of everything going on in college football. We do it via this show because we talk about a bunch of games. Emory makes his picks against the spread, and Emory gives me and all of us a couple of prospects to be watching. NFL draft prospects, pro football draft prospects in each and every game, which is awesome. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL on social media. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. Can't tell you how much it means for those of you that rate and review the show or spread the word in any way about this show. Emory Hunt is the star. I make no bones about that. I'm a huge fan of Emory. He's already becoming a star. You can't turn on CBS Sports HQ, which is on all these fast channels, without seeing Emory. Unbelievable. I don't know, Emory, I might need to get your tailor. You always look so good with your suits and you're always so put together. You can check him out like I do on social media, at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube. And then, of course, it's never too early to sign up for the draft guide. Probably comes out late February or March, but give yourself a good Christmas gift now. Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. It's not that expensive. It'd actually be a cool gift to give a friend, like a buddy that you know likes the NFL draft. That's kind of a cool holiday gift to give one of your bros. Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. Emory had another good week, man. Another winning week. Hopefully a lot of the folks that listen or watch the Even Money Betting Podcast were able to trail you because you were 3-2 last week with your bets. So now you're 23-26 on the season, but you had another winning week. Started with, man, you had Ole Miss plus 2.5, Emory. They beat Georgia convincingly. They out-Georgia'd Georgia. Like, watching that game, I was like, wait, Ole Miss has the dogs on the D-line killing the Georgia O-line like this? 28-10, Ole Miss beat Georgia, Emory. Let's start with your thoughts on that one. Nice job. You had Ole Miss getting 2.5. They won outright by 18.
You know what? You hit the nail on the head, Ross, because watching that game, it was like, wow, Ole Miss is out physicaling and just punching Georgia in the mouth. And it really started on the second drive when Dart went down with the injury. And I was like, oh, man, well, this is about to be ugly for Ole Miss. Like, how fitting they lose their quarterback in the game. Simmons comes in the game, and they march right down the field and get the touchdown. And then after that, Dart comes back in like Superman. It was like, continue to kick Georgia in the you-know-what. And it was just fascinating to watch how a team, and I said this on HQ that night, it was like this was the most physical and physically dominating team from Ole Miss that we've seen under Lane Kiffin. This was an impressive when it was almost like Georgia was shocked that Ole Miss swung back and punched back, and they couldn't handle that counterpunch. And Ole Miss just went out there and let it be known that, hey, we are a physical team. We are just as good as Georgia, if not better in certain spots, and they really took it to them. And to the point was, it was a driving rainstorm, and Georgia had dropped balls, slipping around. Ole Miss was out there like it was just a cool 75-degree day with no problems. They really went there and like took what they felt was theirs, and they got the dub against Georgia.
The other one, how about Colorado? You laid 3 points with the Colorado Buffaloes. And I think they were losing at one point like 13-3, or they were down a couple scores early in the game. They just keep playing. They believe now, man. They really believe now. And they beat Texas Tech 41-27. So you laid the three and covered that easily by 11 points.
Yeah, they were down 13-0, Ross. And to me, this was probably a little bit more impressive of a win than a lot of wins they had this season because, again, they were down 13-0. Knowing what we know about Colorado's season last year, this team just kind of like weathered the storm. And it was a defense that kind of gave the offense multiple chances at bat. Like, hey, okay, we'll hold Texas Tech to a field goal here, field goal here. You know, they got the one touchdown, but we're keeping you in this game because eventually we know our offense will get it together, and that's what happened. And once it clicked, the defense stayed consistently solid, the offense got it together, and then boom, the points started to happen in bunches.
Yeah, I mean, they got a legit chance to win the Big 12.
Yeah, especially with Iowa State losing. You know, when Kansas took it to Iowa State. Now, you know, we'll get into it another part of that Big 12 later on with the rest of the picks, though.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, man, I was skeptical of you laying the 5.5 with Army, but those guys, they beat North Texas 14-3. Army's defense is awesome. North Texas couldn't do anything. I didn't realize, Emory, your guy from ULM, the quarterback from ULM's at North Texas now.
Yeah, and he's so good too because the other quarterback went to Cal, Chandler Rogers, and so it was what was fascinating about that game, Ross. It was how on the first drive you saw North Texas essentially empty the bag. They went for it on virtually every fourth down. They worked their hardest to get down there, got those 3 points, and then Army was like, "All right, time to put this to bed already. Like you're not scoring again. You made us like sweat a little bit, and then it just totally did what Army does. And it's the defense, like you talked about, man. This is why I was so confident about them more so than Navy, is because Army's defense is legit. They don't blow assignments, they don't miss tackles, they don't miss opportunities to turn the ball over, like the interception that they made in the end zone. Cornerback fell off the other receiver, baited the quarterback essentially throwing that pass, and picked it off and made the play. So this team is going to be awesome, and they get the bye week before Notre Dame.
Yes, now they got the bye week and then Notre Dame. That will be an awesome game. Really looking forward to seeing how Army's physicality matches up with the Irish in that one. So those are the three that you hit, which were awesome. The two that you missed, I was skeptical of both. Well, you know me, Emory. I don't like laying points. So kudos to you because you laid the points to Colorado and they covered. You laid the points to the Army and they covered. The two you laid the points on 4 out of the 5 games last week. The two you missed, you laid 14 with Indiana against Michigan. They didn't cover. They did win the game 20-15, but they weren't able to cover. 14 is a pretty big number against the Wolverines.
They were up 17-3, and then they just kind of, started to stall and stammer, and then it allowed Michigan to get back into the game. And credit Indiana because at the end of the day, they, was in a really, really, big spot, a spot they hadn't been in before. So you kind of saw some of the nervousness of the moment, and they just kind of weathered the storm, made big plays defensively. This is more about their defense. And because usually we talk about their offense, but their defense really came through for them in this ballgame because the offense kind of stalled after they jumped out to that big lead.
You're right. And Michigan had to do it without their corner, Will Johnson, who did not play in the game. Does Indiana, Emory, have a bunch of pro prospects? Like they're 10-0. They got to have some good players, but I feel like we don't. I mean, we've talked about Rourke, their quarterback, and how he's from Canada, so everybody wants him. By the way, you see that Chad Kelly injury?
That was
man,
so gross, unfortunate, and the fact that now they got to go play the Grey Cup this week without him.
Brutal, absolutely brutal, on so many levels. What about Emory? Does Indiana have other pro prospects?
Elijah Surratt, the receiver, is a pretty good one. Yeah, he's a real good one. I like their running back, Tyson Lawton. I've been following him since he was at Stony Brook. So they got a bunch of these type guys, but they have pro guys, but maybe not high end draft pick types. But
Right.
it's good to see like the team really be the team, and that shows you the value of coaching and how if you got enough guys that believe, like you said earlier about Colorado, you could do some great things. But Indiana does have some guys that we'll see in maybe some smaller All-Star games like the Hula Bowl or whatnot. But it shows you collectively they're putting together, they're all buying into the same mission.
Wow, that is wild that the running backs from Stony Brook. I love that because I love when FCS guys are getting a chance to play on the big stage. And then the other one you missed, man, we could talk a lot about this game. You had BYU -4 against Utah. They end up winning the game 22-21. Emory, I'm on the plane or in the airport, I think, in Hawaii at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night in Hawaiian time, and the game was still going. This game was going on at 2 a.m. Eastern, so I don't think people realized how crazy it was back and forth.
Yeah, you had a 10:15 local time kickoff or Eastern time kickoff, and it's like, wow, for us in the studio, we didn't get out the studio till 2:15. So it's like we had to watch this whole game because it could have been an upset. And at the end of the day, it looked like it was heading that way. Retzlaff didn't play good for what 59 minutes, and then the last minute he turned to Tom Brady. And so they get enough plays to make their way down the field. And Utah played a really good game defensively. They were hitting BYU. They were very aggressive. Mekhi Bernard had some big plays. The running back for Utah, but at the end of the day, man, BYU found a way, and in a sense, kind of saved the Big 12, in terms of how it's viewed in the college football playoffs, because we know we know the committee wants to have all brand name SEC and Big Ten teams in there, and they would look for any reason to kind of knock anybody else that's not name brand. And so having an undefeated BYU is critical because now you have to keep them up ranked high. It helps out Colorado because they lost because Kansas beat Iowa State. So now you got the undefeated potentially if everything plays out perfectly and no one slips up. You got BYU undefeated in the conference championship game, and the brand in Colorado with Coach Prime and all the superstars, potential Heisman winner and Travis Hunter, first overall pick type quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. That's what makes good TV, and that's what they would rather have than some 3-loss Iowa State versus some 3-loss Utah in a Big 12 championship game.
Let's get to your picks for this week, Emory. Hopefully you get another winning week in a row, 3 in a row. They're presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. I chime in with my thoughts on Emory's pick. Those are presented by Labatt Blue Light. You know why? Because I love Labatt Blue Light, and I love drinking them with friends while I'm watching football. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Let's start with, I love this, Emory. We got games almost every night, and you got games for us to bet on and to watch every night. We'll start with Western Michigan at Bowling Green. Those guys play tomorrow night already, which is amazing. Western Michigan is getting 8.5, Emory.
This is going to be a good game because both teams are really doggone good. Western Michigan has been that surprise team. I know they suffered a little bit last week against Northern Illinois, but this is still a very big game. And Connor Basilick, the quarterback for Bowling Green, is somebody that I've been a fan of since he was at Missouri. And to see him, travel to Indiana and play there for a little bit before transferring again to Bowling Green to finish out his career has been impressive. Because, again, he's been solid this year for them, keeps their offense on pace from the passing game perspective. But in a game of this magnitude in the MAC, 8.5 points is a little bit too much. So I will take Western Michigan to keep this one close against Bowling Green.
Got it. So we got some Tuesday night action. Emory is going to take Western Michigan and the points. It's interesting looking at these other action games. A lot of them pretty big spreads. Central Michigan's getting 16. Ball State getting 6.5. Eastern Michigan getting 9. We'll get to that one. Akron getting 15.5. Kent State getting 30.5. None of these MACtion games are supposed to be that close. What about Eastern Michigan? That's another one you wanted to comment on at Ohio. Eastern Michigan's getting 9.
Yeah, this is another one of these interesting games because Eastern Michigan has been competitive this season. Ohio is still Ohio, so they've done a really good job in staying in the fight. And all of these points to me are still a little bit too much. So I will take Eastern Michigan in the points. But I will say this, Ohio's wide receiver, Coleman Owen, is very good, man. He's one of these dudes that's going to be a solid prospect in terms of like pro prospects. Like if you plug him off Ohio and put him on Indiana, he fits right in. He plays, really well, solid. Doesn't, may not have the wowing attributes, but in terms of being a football player, he plays the game rather well. So he's their leading receiver. He's a big time talent in terms of making these crucial catches, and he's a well built guy too. So I kind of like how he plays. But this game, again, another one that's going to be really close because it's two really competitive teams. The only big spread in the MAC that makes sense is Kent State because they hadn't been good at all this season. But every other one of these games, expect them to come down to the wire because MACtion usually happens like that.
I am impressed by Ohio still being pretty good without Rourke. And just thinking about it, I'm so happy for a kid like Rourke. People heard the name, but he didn't really get a chance to. People didn't really know much about him at Ohio. He goes to Indiana. Now he's like, dude, he's playing against Michigan. He's playing on CBS at 3:30. He's going to play Ohio State. Like, that's the thing that's really cool about the portal, I think, is for these guys that are deserving and worthy of these opportunities to get them.
To your point, Ross, think about it, man. He was playing, at Ohio, and now he's 5th in the Heisman Trophy odds. Like, imagine that, bro. Like, this guy just comes in and just like, now he might, if they keep winning, he might get an invite to New York City. Like, you think while he's in Athens, Ohio, going through the rigors of college football and, playing good ball at Ohio, getting injured a lot at Ohio, going through the mental setbacks of an injury. And do you think it ever crossed his mind that he'd be a Heisman Trophy candidate? It's just amazing to see, man.
It is so cool. I mean, just like, I don't know what his pro career will look like. I don't know what will end up happening to him. But to have this experience this year, this is like a life-altering experience for him. Even if he doesn't become a great pro, he's going to get a sweet job from some Indiana alum, and people will remember this year forever, and they'll remember him. It's very, very cool. All right, let's talk about a Thursday night game. East Carolina against Tulsa. East Carolina's on the road. They're laying 14, Emory.
This is another one that East Carolina has been protecting the ball a little bit better recently, but they still kind of keep both teams in the ball game. So I can see this one getting wild. I would also look at that over too in this game because Tulsa has proven, hey, we got some firepower too. So I will take Tulsa in the points in this one as well. But Rajay Harris, the running back, has been there since 2020, man, and he was good as a freshman. I don't know if you guys remember how awesome he was as a freshman running the football, and then he started to pair up with Keaton Mitchell, and then Keaton Mitchell usurped him because Harris started to get injured a little bit, and that gave Mitchell a chance to really just go off and explode. But Harris is still a really good runner. He blocks well, blocks with effort. He can catch the ball well out of the backfield. He's a productive runner. If you just look at the yards per carry, it won't make sense because it's not 7 yards a carry or 6 whatever yards a carry. It's right at 4 or close to it. But he's a very good back, solid back. Reminds me a lot, and this is a name I like to pull out the grab bag. Reminds me, his game and everything reminds me so much of Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Remember him that played with the Bengals and then played with the Patriots? That's how solid and strong, well put together, disciplined he is as a runner. And he does a good job in short yardage situations. He doesn't waste time making moves behind the line of scrimmage. He's going to always keep the offense on pace. But this is another one of these midweek close games that people will tune in and like, wow, this game is going back and forth. So I'm going to take Tulsa in the points here.
You know, it's interesting, Emory, because you were the first person to ever mention Keaton Mitchell to me. I had never heard the name Keaton Mitchell. A couple years ago, you told me about Keaton Mitchell on the show, and he is electric. The Ravens love him. When I had that Ravens Browns game a couple weeks ago, John Harbaugh couldn't stop talking about Keaton Mitchell and how he couldn't wait until Keaton Mitchell was back for them. I mean, I think that says a lot about him. So, another reason to listen to the College Draft Podcast or to get the draft guide at footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. Emory, a lot of times, is the first person to tell you about some of these guys, especially at some of the smaller schools. What about UCLA coming off their big win against Iowa, Emory? They're getting 3.5 on the road at Washington.
Now, listen, when we talk about Colorado and we talk about Indiana and we talk about Ole Miss against Georgia specifically in terms of how a team believes, man, look at UCLA. Like this team is on a 3-game winning streak, and they believe in what Coach Foster is selling out there. They play such a physical brand of football. I watched that Iowa game last week, Ross, on that Friday night, and was just blown away at how they took it to Iowa physically. In the run game, they ran the ball better than Iowa. They tackled better than Iowa. They hit better than Iowa, and their linebacker Oluwafemi Oladejo was one that consistently stood out, and he's a 6'3", 235-pound backer that can really get it done. I'm like, man, this is this is impressive. So I like the fact that they have a chance now, Ross, to go over their preseason win total of 4.5 if they beat Washington. I mean, so I think UCLA can get it done. So I'm gonna take them here on the road.
Emory taking UCLA and the 3.5 against Washington, who got hammered by Penn State in the whiteout game. That's tough for Washington to go to a whiteout game at Penn State. That game was 28-0, I think, at halftime. All right, what about Kansas getting 3.5? That number again against BYU.
Kansas is just like Colorado. Like, they have talent. They can strike quick, and they really put their foot on the gas from start to finish against Iowa State. Iowa State had no chance. They was getting after Rocco Beck, who I like as a prospect as well down the line. But, man, Devin Neal, the running back, that's one that could have a big day here against BYU. I think Kansas can get BYU and make things very interesting here. I know BYU probably got their wake-up call, but I'm going to take Kansas. And Jalen Daniels playing a very solid game. I think he's a better player than Retzlaff, so I will take Kansas here to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Kansas is playing awesome right now. They are rolling the way they beat Iowa State. And then BYU, man, I still can't believe. I'm watching the game. Twice Utah won the game.
Right.
They're lucky they didn't storm the field. They're lucky they didn't storm the field. But then the one they blew dead, the other one there was a penalty. I mean, that was brutal. All right, let's talk about a big one in the SEC. Feels like almost like an elimination game. Tennessee, they're getting 9.5 at Georgia, Emory.
Man, take Tennessee in the points. And the reason why is that we've seen Georgia, and it's not a knock on Georgia as a complete team. Georgia's defense is Georgia's defense. It's the Georgia offense that's holding this team back. And if we're talking offense, I expect Tennessee to find points against this Georgia Bulldogs team. So I'm taking Tennessee plus the points here. They may not win the game, but they're not going to lose by 10 points. Like, there's no way I can trust anything offensively coming from Georgia right now.
How has it gotten that bad that quick?
Right. We was talking about this Saturday with regards to like Michigan, where you used to maybe we're the old heads, Ross, to where you just kind of expected teams to have these Power 5 teams, the elite blue blood teams, to have guys behind them ready to go. Because it's like no one respects Georgia's skill players. Like, when have we ever said that? No one respects Michigan's quarterback situation. When has Michigan never had a quarterback? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I guess because you can't stack like you used to stack recruits or whatnot, these things tend to happen. So I'm shocked at what we're seeing from Georgia. Because think about it. This was a team that had A.D. Mitchell before he transferred, that had Burton before he transferred. So we've seen them have a stockpile of talent across the board. They just don't have that this season.
Check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We're at Ross Tucker Pod. The keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.